all, it's great that this is our inaugural meeting of the Stockbridge Mohican Commission. Do we want to have a little conversation about sort of what we're doing here? Any thoughts on kind of vision, goals, and aspirations for this group?
Didn't we have that established already in the Mohican Commission?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
We did. I
think what you shared seemed to be aligned with what I think we were trying to accomplish.
Okay. Yeah, look, I think we've got some practical projects that we've outlined, and I think that for me, I think that the larger point is to really foster strengthening of ties and understanding between the Stockbridge Muncie community and the town of Stockbridge and surrounding areas.
Is there a handout or something about?
I just have the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah.
is there an agenda?
There is one on the website.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to see?
All right, so I was thinking that maybe that we should think about joint committee chairs. What does everyone think about that? We should have a member of the Stockbridge Muncie community and a member of the commission from Stockbridge. Sherry, Bonnie, your thoughts?
yeah, I can do that for the tribe.
Okay. And I'm happy to for this group, or if one of you would prefer, that's fine with me too.
Oh, that's fine. You go.
All right. So the chairs are going to be Sherry and Patrick. All right. We do need between us somebody to just take some notes to submit minutes. And I've seen how you have a computer in front of you. Are you?
I can take minutes. They're not always great.
All right. Well, just for today, why don't we figure it out?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to just sort of take notes and
we also can, there's that Otter AI service and other services like it that can kind of record the meetings, and we can automate that process too. But
We're recording? No.
we are recording now.
Okay.
Yep.
we could just simply transcribe the
Yep.
recording and then go from there. As long as everyone's okay with that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, great. And then, Sherry and Bonnie, we've elected to have the representatives who have been appointed by the town of Stockbridge to treat this as an open meeting under Massachusetts general laws. So we were all sworn in today. There is no obligation, of course, for you all to be sworn in or to treat this like a Massachusetts open meeting. But we're going to proceed based on the idea is that these are open meetings from the perspective of us. At a practical level, what that means is that obviously the meetings are open to the public, and to agree that there's follow-up between the meetings. One of us can work with either or both of you, but won't be working together outside the meetings. And so as we kind of figure out next steps, we'll basically assign one of us as a task to work with you guys on whatever those next steps are. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Good. All right. So let's get right into it. Stockbridge Revolutionary War Monument. Just for anybody who might be watching this, either currently or, after the fact, because these meetings do get posted, the video of the meetings. Stockbridge has revolutionary monuments. Stockbridge has war memorials for those who served for the Civil War, for World War I, World War II, Korean, Vietnam. What we don't have is one for the Revolutionary War. So there's been some discussion for a long time in town about a Revolutionary War memorial, and that dovetails nicely with the fact that there were actually two regiments from Stockbridge. If I get any of this wrong, correct me. You guys know the history way better than me. There was what I call the Settler Regiment as well as the Mohican Regiment. And it's our plan to create a memorial that would celebrate all those who served in the Revolutionary War. My personal goal is to have it ready by July 4th, 2026, so that it dovetails with the 250th anniversary of the country, with the upcoming celebrations. Having said that, I did a little work just in terms of preparing a budget, and I don't know if you guys want to talk, or anybody wants to talk about, sort of some thoughts of what the substance of the monument might include.
I mean, what I can say is that I serve as a volunteer for the Stockbridge Memorial Day Committee. And so I work with all the veterans in town for that occasion. We've been doing work with respect to doing inventories of veterans' graves in the cemeteries, just trying to keep things up to date. Many of our veterans are getting older and so less capable of being able to manage the things that they used to do. So we've been working with them on that. And speaking with them, I asked the question about, how come the town doesn't have a Revolutionary War memorial? Because that would be a very significant thing to have, given the history of the town, both from the settlers and the indigenous people who lived here. And then I worked with Sherry to connect with Greg Dudek, I think that's his name, who is the head of the veterans over at the Stockbridge Muncie community, and asked him, his thoughts of the idea of having such a memorial in Stockbridge that recognizes all of the participants of that conflict. I want to recognize that I'm not someone here who glorifies war and stuff like that, but more so just these kind of memorials demonstrate a service to our country or our area that is something. I guess what I'm looking at it from the perspective is that these folks did something that was quite selfless and in some cases just well beyond the call of duty. And I feel like and in today's terms, I think that service in the military has lost its meaning to the general public in terms of what that represents and what it means. And so from my perspective, I would like to find a way to honor the folks who came before us who did this, not as a way to glorify war or violence, but more of a way to kind of prevent it going forward. So that was probably a very awkward way of saying something, but I guess my point is that it's something it's important to me, but I also know that in speaking with the veterans of Stockbridge and in speaking with Greg, it sounded like it was something that was really important to the veterans of the Stockbridge Mohican community as well.
And I don't think we're glorifying anything. I think that we're honoring service in the founding of the country. And I think, I also would point out that, the document you sent around between the two regiments had several dozens of names on it.
Well, and this is where Rick can correct me, but we had regiments, but also Stockbridge was a mustering point for the war.
So that a lot of the people who enlisted in Stockbridge weren't necessarily from Stockbridge. So it's trying to sort those out.
And is there a sense that we should just, celebrate everyone who enlisted here? I don't know that we need to separate them.
Well, I guess
We buy a big enough stone.
It's a very large, would be a very large stone.
I mean, if your intent is to put names on the memorial, we've got a big task ahead of us, I think. If you're just going to make a memorial without names, and I don't think I would like that. It's just it's gonna be a little labor intense, and some of that information is online with the state archives, and some of it we just have to dig for. So
Well, Bonnie and Sherry, do you have any thoughts on the memorial?
I was thinking maybe we could have Joanne Shedler. Well, I should back up. When we talked about doing this commission, we also talked maybe about having some subcommittees or groups for certain events or, so I think on this one, Joanne Shedler, who is a Mohican vet, would be a good person to help with the names and dates and stuff. So,
How do you spell her last name? Just for a minute.
SCH, is it DLER, Bonnie? SCH,
ED,
yeah, LER.
LER.
Shedler. Okay, great.
And I can reach out to her too and let her know what we're doing in that.
And
One might be reaching out to her.
hello, Shannon, how are you? Good, we hope. I see her audio is not connected yet. And I would just point out when we think about this memorial, that, you know, as it relates to this commission, that there were really tremendous impacts on the community based on the service that the folks gave during the Revolutionary War. There was direct impacts on the viabilities of many, in fact, most and eventually all of the Mohican families. And I think that it's important historically to celebrate that contribution and that sacrifice, which ultimately, you know, was one of the driving forces in terms of what eventually happened, you know, where so many folks died in that one battle. And I think that telling the stories that around the early history of the town is important to put in context what some of the work of this commission will be. So that said, I have a practical point, which is behind the Congregational Church, there's a very large piece of marble that is, I think, 8 to 10 feet long by several feet deep, whatever, that might be able to be repurposed from the 1800s, and it might be able to be repurposed into a stone that could hold a plaque with a large set of names. I think that we might want to take a site visit and look at it. Brent, the pastor of the church, has made that stone available to us if we want it. And it would need to be, it's a flat stone that's kind of a tablet like this. But it could potentially be mounted onto something, and it could be something that we might be able to use for this project. Anyway, it's the price is right, it's free. So, you know, certainly it's worth taking a look at.
Yeah,
Good.
I think it's a good idea. I didn't catch where you said that you were thinking of placing the monument.
We have in front of the Congregational Church in the town green, next to the chime tower, is the War Memorial, which has the other, you know, memorials. The memorials from the other conflicts
From
in
the
which
same
people
space.
serve.
So that area too, I mean, maybe this would relate to, I don't know if it's a different agenda item where you had about generally about historical markers in town. But that same location is also the site of the meeting house that founded the town. So it's important to everyone, you know, to our tribe and to residents. So that's the whole, you know, history of the founding of the town for religious and political meetings. So I would think that if you're placing something there, that there should also be, you know, some kind of indication of the meeting house site. And half of it's destroyed in the roadway, but the other half is still remaining like right in front of the chime tower area that we did the archaeology work for. So I just wanted to bring that up if.
No, and in fact, there's a separate, over the weekend, I wrote 4 grant requests for, locally, we have this thing called community preservation, which is basically can go toward open space or historic projects. And we wrote, and there's discussion in town, and I wrote actually grant requests for historical markers for the sort of Main Street area, where we would budget for up to 20 bronze plaques that could be ground mounted, that would maybe even include something like a QR code where they could go to a website and kind of learn more about something. And I could see, you know, both with the with the monument and with markers. Obviously, we don't want to disturb the ground. We just want to kind of put things on top of the ground, not disturb what's there. But I think that there's potentially a larger project here which would celebrate some of the history of the entire strip, so to speak, and I could see out of those 20 markers, 5 to 10 of them really celebrating what was at some of the locations along Main Street, whether it was, the chief's resident, the residence of key folks in the 18th century, the meeting house, obviously, and any other, places of historical significance.
That sounds good. And I think for the Revolutionary War list, I think there's definitely a good start to it. And I think, like Sherry said, maybe we would just need Joanne and Mohican veterans to, do any further work to expand it, because it's always hard once you have a list, you don't want to leave someone out. So,
That's right.
But yeah, so I think maybe if they could review what we already have and then, decide when we feel like we can't find any more names. And then I think we'd probably just have to have something, I would imagine, on there about, anyone else who's not listed that,
And in terms of sourcing those names, we had the West Point list, we have lists from the state. There's obviously in Pittsfield, some lists that are in the historical room at the Pittsfield, at the Berkshire Athenaeum. So we do have some cross-referencing opportunities to try to pull this together. And I think we have a little bit of time to do it. This would, the way our funding cycle works is that this would be funded for actual fabrication wouldn't be able to be begun before July 1st of 2025. So that would give us a window of 8 months to sort of figure out what it's going to say. And I would think that, is this something in terms of the names you want to work with Joanne and the tribe on, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So at our end, Rick is going to be the point person, and, and I think that in terms of like the local interaction with, with the, our Veterans and Memorial Day Committee, Rich, you're, kind of natural for that. So, okay, good.
So Patrick, what besides helping provide the names, do you need the tribe to be involved in?
I think that there's a couple of things. One, there's some discussion about whether as part of this, because, the way that the current, monument stones are arranged, you can't just kind of add another one in. So we may need to re-landscape that area and the existing stones. To some degree, there's been some discussion about perhaps having a point of reflection, with perhaps kind of bench or, just a place for people to kind of, interact. Anyway, there's certainly kind of thinking through how we use the space between what's there now. I mean, on the existing space, we have the chime tower, we have the existing monuments. We're talking about adding a monument, possibly, re-landscaping it in a way that doesn't disturb the ground some way. But I think that it's really important that as those ideas, come forward, that, that just like Bonnie, you just did now, that we have a lot of back and forth about what some of the ideas of how we might approach that, and whether markers we might want to add, from that kind of, sister project of the ground-based markers,
So you're talking like possibly putting benches there or some.
I mean, so at this point, we're brainstorming, but yeah, I think it's really kind of,
Sherry, I think it was important to the Stockbridge veterans that there was a collaborative effort to figure out how we create this memorial and how we envision it in that space. So they're very eager to work with the Stockbridge Muncie community veterans and the Stockbridge community Muncie community in a larger way to kind of determine how we present what that looks like and how it is an experience for anybody who comes to visit it. So.
Oh, good. So then you'll be working with Greg on that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
okay. Any other things on the Revolutionary War Memorial? We'll try to make some progress over the next, over the coming weeks. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is the Watatinik sign request. Bonnie, am I pronouncing that right?
I mean, it's changed, how people say it slightly over the years, but I think that's fine. It's like kind of like Watatinik.
Watatinik, okay, good. So we do have 10 signs fabricated. We haven't put them all up yet, and if we want to have any input into which river crossings they go on, we can do that within Stockbridge. We also have had an informal request from one of the Houstonic groups that is active from Pittsfield into Connecticut about putting them on some of their trails. Obviously, they would need to be changed a little bit because it wouldn't be the town of Stockbridge. And we've also had informal requests from some of the surrounding towns that are in the Houstonic River corridor. So before responding to those, I wanted to get your sense of whether this was something that you are interested in us pursuing or pursuing yourselves or having us as a commission pursue. I created the design files, and so modifying them is relatively straightforward. And the signs cost about $100 each, and whoever would want to have them fabricated, we would cover the cost of that themselves for their communities.
Well, what do you think, Bonnie?
But the question is, placement of recommendations for
Yeah.
where to place them.
Yeah, I mean, originally we were thinking we would put these up in Stockbridge, and now some other communities have reached out and said, hey, can we get a version for us? Do we want to allow that, A? And if so, do we want a review process? You want to sign off on copy? For example, let's say they were putting it along the Hoosic River or the Concopat Stream or something. I mean, there's a lot of different places and ways that, personally, I think that we shouldn't allow much modification other than if the location doesn't, if it's not the Houstonic River, we should change that. But I don't think, for example, changing the other wording is something that we should do, but that's really not, I mean, yeah.
I guess I kind of feel like maybe get them in, they're not in the ground yet in Stockbridge.
I think we put up 2 of them. And we got a total of 10 to put up. But we'll have them all up in the next couple of months. Yeah.
Shannon, were you saying something? Sound isn't connecting.
And then, yeah, I don't, but I think obviously it would.
What was that?
She must be driving.
I think you're on mute now, maybe, or no? I don't know.
No, I was in my car, but my connection.
Sharon, we're not able to hear you yet. Nope. Let's try to come back in. So why don't we hold off on that till Shannon comes back?
Do you think for now we should just stick with the Housatonic signs that you guys have and see how it goes with that? And then
It's totally up to you as far as I'm concerned. We can just get these up and, follow up later on if we decide we want to expand them, I think it was,
Yeah. Let's just get them up for now and then
okay.
see how it goes unless Shannon comes in and she has a different idea.
All right, so while we're waiting to see if Shane comes back in, why don't we talk about community outreach initiatives? We did get that request from Sheffield around the,
I'm here to represent.
Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Susan Pittman. I've been speaking,
Susan.
I've been corresponding with you at least briefly. The Sheffield Land Trust, of course, does a lot of conservation of lands. And our newest project is the Cooper Hill project, which is basically where the Bartholomew's Cobble is. And when we had our outreach and education meeting last week, it was suggested that our winter lecture, which has been going on for, I think it's 25 years now that we've had our winter lecture, it's generally at the end of February or the beginning of March. And I do have some tentative dates that Sherry, I'd like to send to you. I was going to give them to you, I just didn't realize that you were going to be present. But this is really good information for me to understand. I really don't have a whole lot of historic understanding of what happened with Mohicans here. I am very much a part of the Sheffield Historical Society, so I have that information. But just to become familiar with the participants and how your organization functions is really very interesting for me. So thank you for letting me be here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and Shannon's on now, so maybe we can quick jump back.
okay.
Except you're muted.
I think you're muted. Oh, there we go.
Thank you so much. I'm always in the car. So getting back to that question about the signage, I said it makes sense in terms of it just further codifies our presence in that area originally. But I said my suggestion would be that it's aligned with Bonnie and her team to make sure that it's solidified as appropriate in terms of where it's placed and it has connection to our tribe. And I think if it can be guided that way, I don't think that the tribal council would have any issue with supporting those types of endeavors. I just talked to recently Lori and Peter from the Norman Rockwell Museum, and I think about America 250, and I think the timing of it is very appropriate. But I think it needs to be guided. You know, you have Rick sitting next to you, have Rich. I think there is huge opportunity for us in terms of how we navigate this. But I think as we come upon the celebration of the United States of 250 years, it's also, I think, keep in mind that Indigenous communities don't necessarily see it as a celebration. It's more reflective. It's more to look at history the way that it truly is through that lens. And so I think any opportunity that we can have to participate in a way that seems appropriate and culturally and historically appropriate, I think we take advantage of those opportunities.
I think that's great. I just would also point out that, Bonnie, I think that your choice of what ethnic to go on the signs was absolutely brilliant. The land beyond the mountains tells a story of what the name for the Berkshires was for thousands of years before it was known as the Berkshires. And personally, I think it's a great it's a word that most folks who are in these parts now have never heard. And I think that getting that word out there is really a really kind of appropriate way to advance the types of goals Shannon just spoke of.
Can I actually ask, I'm gonna go back to an agenda item with respect to the Revolutionary War Memorial.
Yeah.
And it's perhaps more aggressive, but I'm hearing what Shannon's saying, and I agree that it's like, we're wanting to put a Revolutionary War Memorial because we who are not Indigenous are trying to celebrate the country, but that's not necessarily the same experience for all people. And I'm just curious if it makes sense, rather than to commemorate it in 2026 on July 4th, but maybe to do something more appropriate, whether it's Memorial Day or Veterans Day in 2025, is something where it's reflective of the service of those people. And you're removing it from a particular occasion, such as the 250th of the country. So.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Rich, because I think that's what it is, right? It's the landscape of America and how it was formed and because Indigenous people are relational people. So the relationship, in complex relationship, and still to this day, we share a very complex relationship with the United States government. And so I think I appreciate that because that fact that in spite of us not even being considered citizens during that period of time, and really quite honestly, we've only been United States citizens, although we've always been citizens of our nations for 100 years. We just celebrated, or whatever you want to call that, a recognition of our citizenship this year. So that's 100 years, which is not a lot of time when you think about that. I mean, just to give you some perspective, my grandparent, when, my dad was born, his parents weren't US citizens. So, so there's that. So, and they're not immigrants of this country. So it is a complex relationship, but I think from militarily, our nation and others have played a significant role in the forming and shaping of this country. And I think it's appropriate to look at it from that lens, considering per capita or per race, we still serve at the highest per capita. I think that sentiment is still true today. And I think it's an opportunity to not only reflect on the Revolutionary War, but bring a contemporary 21st century perspective to our service to this country.
Mhm. Great. I think that it's likely that we're unable, because our funding's around that we're working on now, we can't start to spend the money till July 1st, 25. So getting the actual fabrication done by Veterans Day 25 might be difficult, but certainly Memorial Day 26 might be more realistic.
Would
but
there
I
be
think
an opportunity though to kick it off like most do, just to bring people into their story, like anything else, when you break ground, when you do different things coming soon? But I think that should be reflective of that. And I think it needs to be in a good way, in terms of, I appreciate that you want to include our veterans. But, I think that there's an opportunity, and I hope that we, maybe we will miss an opportunity. Perhaps to your point, Patrick, we can't maybe do that, but people can know that it's coming, and maybe we can garner support and allies too. And people might be interested in it and funding future opportunities for us to be able to tell our story through different inflections and mediums.
Yep.
I'll just say that the veterans from Stockbridge are eager to find ways to have shared experiences, so that whether it's on Veterans Day at the reservation or here or Memorial Day or what have you, finding ways where there's a shared experience is something that's important to them.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, so in terms of community outreach initiatives, I think that kind of dovetails nicely with what you're talking about, Shannon, in terms of like how we tell these stories in a way that builds allies and tells the entire story. Yeah, one of the things that we mentioned, I think, when you were coming on was there's also a grant request I wrote around some ground mounted plaques around town that might even include, I think this is the first one I ever saw, maybe a QR code in the bronze for people to then go and get more information as they're walking around town. And I think that, that we want to avail ourselves of as many opportunities as we have to kind of do these types of community outreach initiatives. Are there any practical ones that you guys want to think about for the coming months or next 12 months that we could get started on, or any thoughts on that?
I liked, like you were saying, the idea about the some kind of markers along Main Street, especially because we already have the Main Street walking tour, and there's so much interpretation that's already just waiting. And I don't know with the community preservation funds, have you checked that interpretive markers like that would be allowed? Because I feel like in the past, I understood that it wasn't.
Yeah, we talked about that a little, and I don't have an answer yet. Our lawyers review the requests once the applications are in, so I won't know for sure. I'm trying to position the markers as an accessibility issue because community preservation can fund handicap accessibility. So to the degree that, for example, people can't take the tour. This would give people a place to have handicapped accessible access to that information that they would get on the tour. And that may be a way for us to be able to fund it, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
We'll have to figure it out. And if not, then the question, the town has more flexibility with free cash. And I can't speak for the town, but I've made it clear that personally, we did get payment of 1.6 million as part of the restitution for the Restor River. And that has grown with interest. And I think it would be appropriate if some small part of those funds went toward initiatives that build community because of the devastating impacts on that resource that is a result of the PCB pollution. So I'm exploring a number of different funding opportunities for these initiatives. CPC is just one of them.
Great. Yeah. Well, I think personally that one, the idea of the Main Street signage, I would prioritize. I feel like it's ready and waiting. It's something people are looking for. It's been a discussion for a long time. And if there's a way to do that, and I like the idea of it being something like tied together, not kind of like scattered signs, but more something that is a planned,
Oh, yeah. And we're thinking like, have you on North Street, how they have the plaques that are actually in the sidewalk panels?
I
don't know if you ever noticed them. On North Street in Pittsfield, they have a number of plaques, bronze plaques that are embedded in the concrete. So as people are walking by, they can see, oh, this is where that used to be. And that was sort of like an idea that we're thinking about here. So it was kind of just it becomes part of the landscape. And as people are doing the walking tour, the whatever, just visiting the town, that they could look for these markers at various locations around town. Yeah. Or other solutions. Are there any other, community outreach type of things for the Berkshires that you're planning in 2025, like a powwow? Or I know there's been some discussion maybe of and if this isn't a forum to talk about, that's fine too. But to agree that we can assist with any other of your initiatives around your own public outreach, community outreach initiatives, we'd be happy to.
Well, Patrick, I know there's been a few people reaching out, and you brought it to my attention about having powwows out there. The tribe only has one powwow, and that's on our reservation.
Okay.
Each year, so we don't like sponsor or support other powwows out in the area. Just so you're aware, if somebody
Is there another term for it basically it's a community celebration and I know they haven't always been sanctioned. Is there a desire to, I guess program your own, community events,
Let's just say this, Patrick. I mean, you have Sherry and Bonnie there, and if there are direct events that are going to take place with our nation, we will convey those through them.
Okay.
In terms of that. There are a lot of people, let's just say, that are impassioned about our culture and want to present it in a certain way. And we have had to temper that and let people know we have communication protocols. We have certain things that you can't use our likeness. There's certain things that one cannot do. Because there was something termed the Mohican Homeland Powwow, and it was framed in such a way that a layperson would look at it and go, oh, the tribe is having this celebration or whatever. But when in fact, we didn't have anything to do with the planning or the development of it. It's not to suggest we would ever be opposed to doing those types of things, but I would say moving forward, Bonnie would be that person that, there would be outreach to, and the tribe, we've since talked to those parties and just squelched it and said, hey, I understand you want to do that, but you can't manipulate the words to fit your narrative to attract people and give the impression that the tribe is doing this. And so, there's still a lot of education that has to be done. And that's why I said anything that can be done collectively in partnership, then everybody's clearly aware of what's happening, I think is better for all of us. I mean, there are artists, there are people that do things and there's nothing prohibitive of that, but you can't do it in the name of the tribe. So, we're very mindful. And I would see, it also looks like monetizing opportunity for people too. And so we're trying to be mindful of that as well, and I'll just leave it there.
Yeah,
I get it. I mean, there's so much more to unpack here. I know, but let's just say we have a better handle on things, and now that we have a committee here in the homelands, we will engage them more so too on some of these endeavors to make sure that it's culturally appropriate, something that the tribe can align with and is sanctioned by the tribe and collective with both us and you. So let's just say we'll leave it there for now. But I would imagine if there is opportunity to monetize, you will see a lot of people wanting to do that, and the tribe has no necessary opposition to that. But we have a board now that can help guide some of those activities, and the tribe themselves can sanction it and present it in a way that's appropriate, we feel is appropriate for us. And there's alignment versus just, I always tell people our culture isn't for sale. And I mean that sincerely. And I don't mean that tongue in cheek, but it's not. We've been acculturated for a long time. And I think that the level of tolerance is very little now. And oftentimes it's by our own people. So we have to be mindful of how we navigate this, especially because we need to be able to control the narrative. We need to control what's being put out there. And we don't need to diminish the important work that Bonnie and Sherry, and our Director of Cultural Affairs is doing, especially, when we're still at the phases of trying to do reparations and repatriation. And so that work continues absent any celebration, absent whatever relationship. So that at the forefront is what we're trying to accomplish. So that is our primary concern is making sure we're still perceived from a 21st century lens, that people understand that we're not relegated past tense, that we have played a significant role, especially in Stockbridge, historically and relationally. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I don't split hairs. I don't mince words, but I mean that in the utmost respectful way. But I think, we need to make sure that we get a good handle on that.
And to the degree that there are, however you want to get that message out, I feel like this commission has a relationship with the tribe and its government, not with outsiders who may be wanting to do other things. It's our intent to work directly and exclusively with you through these types of things. And to the degree that we can do that in a supportive way, but we hear you loud and clear. I guess we can leave it at that.
Thank you. And we don't want to be counterintuitive to your efforts either, but we would just like to, as it relates specifically to our nation, just that's why the forming of this committee is so important to us, so that we make sure that there's open and transparent communication and that everybody is aligned with what our goals and objectives are.
All right. Excellent.
I did have one question about outreach. So you all know that I'm the president of the Stockbridge Land Trust, and we work with we are working on conservation in the town. And one of the challenges that we see right now is that there are more than a few dozen conservation restrictions on the land that prevents development and any type of changes to the landscape. One of the challenges that we see right now is that there is it's either a generational transference of knowledge or lack thereof of these conservation restrictions. So as families pass down properties to future generations, there's an education level there to bring those generations up to speed on the obligations they have on their lands because there's conservation restrictions. The same thing applies when people purchase land and those conservation restrictions transfer over to the new owner. I see, and I'm not trying to, I'm just sort of bringing this up, but I also see that there is, at least from my perspective and a number of people on the land trust and others with me, that there's also this, there's a sensitivity around cultural sensitivities with respect to the land and figuring out what is the best way to educate people about these cultural sensitivities so that we're not in a situation where, you know, something that is and was important. Everything is important, but I'm simply saying like, there's always that specific instance where something happens and you're just like, how do we prevent this from happening so that
Right.
we don't
I mean,
run-
right, Rich, there were a lot of, even with Monument Mountain, there were a lot of lessons learned, right? For us, for everyone, right?
Right.
In terms of how to navigate that. And to your point, intergenerational, maybe the continuity that lacked or didn't exist, right? I sometimes call it the stop being so darn helpful syndrome, right? People want to be exceedingly helpful and they want to do all these things and they just want to forge ahead, you know? I mean, even for us, we're stepping back, taking a step back and reflecting on lessons learned too. You know, sometimes acquiring land for us isn't always the best thing, you know, especially if there's encumbrance, restrictions, certain things, you know, I mean, the Monument Mountain aligned with us because it's just about, you know, essentially stewardship and climate change resiliency, but that not always be the case because we had to even educate our own people, you know, their environmental studies. You have to know, you know, are there invasive species? Are there things that we need to know or not know? And to your point, are there restrictions with these types of activities? Maybe what we could do, Rich, is, you know, I appreciate the level of interest and intellect that exists in Stockbridge and your surrounding areas in terms of allyship and people wanting to do the right thing. Maybe it's a matter of having some webinars and some keynotes and educating people about what that is and isn't and the complexity. I think, you know, it may, you know, or even starting to convey it in a different way that's digestible to people. We're not trying to cram it down their throats, but you're trying to make them heighten their awareness so they understand what it is or isn't. Or even our own people, you know, I have people out there soliciting land back for us, if you would, not knowing that, you know, that might not be a good thing. And so, you know, and then I have to find ways, or Bonnie or Sherry, to temper that and say, thank you, you know, and it isn't a one size fits all either, Rich. And I think you can all appreciate, I sincerely appreciate what you're saying. So maybe we could keep that as an ongoing discussion and figure out how we should continue to find opportunities to, one, educate, and then make sure that we build that continuity so everybody is consciously aware of what that is or isn't.
And one way that you might take a look at it specific to Massachusetts law is, yeah, this idea of a conservation restriction is a Massachusetts concept around land use and around, you know, it relates to things like taxation levels and you know, and there's incentives around, for example, property tax assessments. There is a relatively new type of cultural easement in Massachusetts specific to Indigenous folks that has been embraced in the eastern part of the state somewhat, which might provide access to land without the actual requirement to own the land, and that might be specifically provided by private landowners to your tribe, if that's something you're interested in. And if you want to learn more about that, there's actually a woman who Oleander had on one of the municipal vulnerabilities
Right.
groups.
I think what we can do is we can Bridget, who is an environmental attorney by trade, and envelop her too. I know that I had a couple of meetings with Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There's significant interest and most recently was at Harvard to talk about just reciprocity and different things, but there was significant interest in all of those things from a policy legislative perspective. So I think that those are all key indicators that we're all going in the right direction. So, but again, I apologize for my tardiness today, everyone. My apologies. I have another meeting with the court shortly. And so I'm going to follow up with Sherry and Bonnie on the rest of it, but I look forward to working with all of you. I appreciate the opportunity for to expand our relationship and work collectively on behalf of our nation and Stockbridge.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic holiday. I'll say that, holiday.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
I think from my perspective, I just wanted to say that it's more of like, what we constantly deal with is someone's trying to put a swimming pool or a driveway or a septic tank or whatever on land that's conserved. And I see an increasing likelihood that will continue without education to let them know that that's not permissible. But I also feel like there's, and I don't know how to handle this, and this is where I'm looking for guidance from the Stockbridge Mohican community, that there might be type of situations where people are wanting to put an Olympic-sized swimming pool on a land that has some cultural sensitivities, and how do we deal with that? That's what I'm also looking at.
And that might be something where Jeff can help out if the landowner's open to finding out if he has something there, that maybe Jeff could work with them on that.
And maybe we just do all the pools above ground so that they don't have to disturb the ground. What do you think, Bonnie?
Well, they still disturb the ground.
I'm just kidding. I'm making a bad joke. Sorry.
Yeah, we can share like some preferred language or something, maybe, if that helps, Rich, about how we'd like to be consulted, who to contact, kind of like our historic preservation preferences. I don't know if there's a way you can actually write it into something, or if it's more just, if it has to be voluntary. I'm not quite sure. We can share that.
Okay.
Good. All right. So I think that kind of gets us.
Can we get back to her question? We kind of left her hanging. I'm sorry, I forgot your name already. But yeah, we kind of left you hanging and didn't get to finish your questions.
Well, I have a lot of questions. I'm actually getting a lot of answers just listening to this. I do have a background with Indigenous. My husband is Polynesian, so I've kind of gone through, and I have children who are also Polynesian. And so I do understand a lot of this. I'm just trying to be more sensitive to the Mohican. It's an incredible history, and what we really like to do is really, and you really brought a lot of this up as the president of the Land Trust, is that we're really looking for awareness. It's for intergenerational. The lecture that I'm referring to is free to the public, and we generally have about 100 people, as many as we can pack into Dewey Hall, we pack in, and we really have found that it's really very helpful for people. My husband is also part of the Conservation Commission in Sheffield, and so a lot of these issues are something that we've lived with for many, many years. So this is, I think that, Sherry, I'd like to just send you an email so that we can start discussing what is really a sensitive way of dealing with this for the public. And I totally understand what your concerns are.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. You can email me.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
All right. So I think that we've kind of gone through the agenda. Are there any other topics that you want to touch on, or should we just try to, I'm thinking maybe follow up meeting in January. What do y'all think?
Well, I thought we were gonna establish, like, are we having a reoccurring one on the same date, same time, so people can.
Do you want to do it monthly or every other month? What kind of schedule do you think makes sense?
Maybe once a month, then it doesn't get so long and so much waiting for.
Yeah. All right. So today's the 25th. I think that we should maybe shoot for the first week in January. Maybe we start doing, let's just pull up our calendars. And we'll kick off the new year. How about on January, January, you want to do January 6th? Sort of a weird day of the year now, but 10 a.m.
Unfortunately, I'm gone that week.
How about the 13th then?
That works.
All right.
Mhm. As long as it's in the morning, because I got
Yep.
an interest meeting in the afternoon.
All right. So 10 o'clock, we'll do the second Monday in January at 10 a.m. All right.
So then we'll keep it on the 13th every month.
Yeah, I'm thinking like the Monday, if you want to do the second Monday of the month.
Okay.
I'll put that as a repeating thing. All right, great. All right. Any other business? Hearing none, I think we should have a motion to adjourn then.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Patrick, before you hang up, though, I'm just letting you know, I'm gonna be out there the week of December 8th, so if anybody has any.
Mhm. I will see you then. And if anybody, and if, instead of the whole week, Sherry?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
great. All right, good. Excellent.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
God bless.